Okay, so let's go over one of the toughest questions on the TSI, and we're just gonna go one step at a time, and we're gonna just try to help you to make sense of it. So it says x to the negative fifth y over y to the third with a negative exponent on the outside. So we are going to start with whatever is found on the inside, and that's just a fraction. Anytime you have a fraction, so say we had 10 over 2, that's the same as saying 10 divided by 2. So we are literally taking this top and we're dividing it by this bottom. So I like to draw a little bit of a line, and what that line helps me to see is that I divide the x's by the x's, and I divide the y's by the y's. In this case, there is no x on the bottom, so I would just keep it the same, x to the negative fifth. But over here, you have y divided by y to the third. So let's go ahead and write it over here. Y over y to the third is the same as saying y divided by y to the third. Okay? Now, anytime you're dividing and there's an exponent, you subtract the exponent. So there's an invisible 1 right here. So it would be y 1 minus 3. 1 minus 3 is y to the negative 2. So it would be y to the negative 2 power. Okay, so again, we were only working on what was on the inside, and we haven't even dealt with what's on the outside. We haven't looked at that negative 1 yet. But we are still not done with the inside yet. Whenever you get an answer and there's a negative exponent, the answer is not complete. We want the answer to never have negative exponents on the top. So the way that we make these negative exponents into positive exponents is by putting them on the bottom. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, if you look at this, this can be written over an invisible 1. So if we wanted to make this negative 5 a positive 5 and this negative 2 a positive 2, we literally have to go from moving it from being on the top to have everything moving and being on the bottom. So we literally can write 1 over x to the positive fifth y squared. So by moving everything from the top to the bottom, we were able to make all the exponents positive. All right, so now we have everything finished on the inside of the parentheses. So now we're able to figure out, okay, now we have this negative 1 on the outside. What do I do with it? Well, we want to view this as two parts. First, we're going to deal with the negative, and then we're going to deal with the 1. So anytime you have a negative exponent and it's on the outside, what you do in order to make this positive is you flip it. So this fraction right now is 1 over x to the fifth y squared. If we want to make this positive, we just flip it. So we take all those stuff on the bottom and we put it on the top. So it would be x to the fifth y squared. You could put it over 1, but it's also not necessary because it's the same as just saying x to the fifth y squared. And now it's to the 1 power. So I know it seems confusing, but all we did was we saw that this was a negative 1. We had to change this negative into a positive. The way that we deal with this negative is just by flipping the fraction upside down. Because this is on the bottom, we ended up putting it on the top. We could write it over 1, but it's just not necessary because it's the same as saying x to the fifth y squared. So now we still have that 1 that we could deal with on the outside. So what we do is we just multiply it out. We do x to the fifth times 1. You multiply the exponents. So 5 times 1 is 5. So it'll be x to the fifth power. And then with this one, you multiply 2 times 1, which is 2, y squared. So our answer would be x to the fifth y squared, and our answer would be C. Now, we did a lot in this problem, and I know some of you may feel lost. Don't feel bad because this problem was doing the most. So just don't feel bad if you feel a little lost. So I created a practice test that now that we were done using the example problems that the TSI exam gave us, we now need to practice this more and more. And that's why I created this practice test. So here's my practice test. here is question number 27 that I created for you guys so that you can practice those skills again and again. So we're going to look at question number 27 and we're going to apply the same principles. Now, please don't X out of this video. Watch this because the second time is when you're really going to feel like what we learned is going to sink in. So I'm going to write it bigger just because I like to write it bigger. Buys me some time as well. So I'm going to write it bigger. And then I'm going to remember, okay, so I'm going to draw my line because it's like a division problem. And whatever is on the top, the x's, I want to divide by the x's on the bottom. The y's on the top, I want to divide by the y's on the bottom. So here, there is no x on the bottom. So we're just going to keep this the same, x to the negative third. Then I'm going to do the y's. So it's literally y over y to the fourth. That's the same as saying y to the first power divided by y to the fourth. When you're dividing, you subtract. So it'd be y1 minus 4. So that'd be y to the negative third power. So I'm going to write y to the negative third power. And I'm going to bring everything down. Okay, but I'm not finished with the inside yet. And you may have said, the reason why I'm not finished is because there's negatives on the inside. And you're correct by that. So do you remember how we get rid of the negatives on the inside? Well, if we want to make these positive, we just switch what side they're on. So right now, this is as if it's written over a positive 1. So if we want to make these positive, we just put it on the bottom of the fraction. So instead of x to the negative third, y to the negative third over 1, we now can write 1 over x to the positive 3, y to the positive 3. And now we are officially done with everything on the inside. So we're going to go ahead and write that exponent on the outside, negative 2. All right, so it's not as complicated as it seems. I'm going to erase this just to make some space, but not as complicated as it seems. So now we have to deal with the negative, and then we can deal with the 2. So to get rid of that negative, do you remember what we have to do? Yep, we just flip it again. So whatever's on the bottom, we're going to put on the top. So now it's going to be x to the third, y to the third. We don't have to write it over a 1 because it's the same as just writing it like that. And now that 2 is a positive 2. Perfect. And then the very last step is to multiply the exponents. 3 times 2 is 6, so it'll be x to the 6th power. And then 3 times 2 is 6 again, so it'll be y to the 6th power. So my answer is going to be B. So a few skills, if you're still struggling with this, a few skills that you may want to write down is that when you're dividing exponents, x to the third divided by x squared, you subtract. So it'd be x to the third minus x squared. Whoop. You would subtract x to the third minus 2, and it would be x to the first power. So that's one skill. Whenever you're dividing exponents, you subtract. Okay? So that's one skill that you need. Also, if you have a negative exponent on the top and you want to make it positive, if it's over an invisible 1 and you want to make that positive, you literally just put it to the bottom. So it would be 1 over x squared. That's how you make it positive. Okay? So if you have x to the third power, y to the third power, and now you have a negative 2 on the outside, you can make this first deal with the negative by switching this from the top to the bottom. So just another switch, 1 over x to the third, y third. And then you multiply it out by the 2. So you'd multiply it out by the 2. So you would do 2 times 3, which is 6, x to the 6. 3 times 2 is 6, y to the 6. And don't forget that it's all over the number 1. And that would be our answer. So we're going to keep doing practice problems like this. Don't give up. Don't feel like it's too hard. We'll be okay. But this was just an example to show you. This is why I created my practice tests. The link will be in the description. And this is why I'm going to keep practicing with you guys. Don't give up when something's too hard. We got this. Just keep practicing. See you in the next one.